In order to analyze your recordings of your translation performances, we're going to use the concept of translator styles or translation styles. The terminology is not very fixed. Here's an overview, though, first of the experiment we're going to do. You're going to translate two texts, 250 words, or the corresponding amount of characters in Chinese. If you're going into L2, take it down to 200 words. You're going to translate in Word, that is with no translation memory and no machine translation, except if you want to consult machine translation as a dictionary. Okay, so no technology beyond Word. You're going to screen record both performances. And when you screen record, we just want to see the image of what happens on the screen. We don't want to record your face. You can do that in BB Flashback if you want to see yourself suffering, but here we don't need that, and we don't need keystroke logs, which you also have in BB Flashback, so just turn that off if you like. The first translation, we ask you to do it at a brisk professional speed. Do not be perfectionist, just go through it as you would normally for a first draft of a translation. And the second, you're going to go 30% faster. So what you're going to have to do is take the time for the first, let's say it's 25 minutes, and then calculate the time you're aiming for the second, which will be 30% faster. How do you calculate 30% faster? Take the 25 minutes, go to your calculator, multiply it by 0.7, and that will give you the aim. It might come down to 19 or 20 minutes. And in the second translation, you're going to have to aim for that target time, okay? And you write down the time, and then you translate and apply pressure to yourself to go 30% faster. At the end of that, you're going to play back the recordings and write down roughly how many minutes, don't worry about seconds, roughly how many minutes are used for the four main phases of your performance. Performance is the actual translating of the texts. What do we mean by phases? Well, here we go. Phase one, pre-drafting. This is everything you do prior to typing the first word of the translation in Word. Okay, so that's reading the text, checking any terminology, perhaps looking for a parallel text, anything like that. Then revision is here really post-drafting. Everything you do after you type the last word of your translation for the first time. So I've translated the text, I've got to the end, I write that last word, and now I'm going to read over the text, perhaps to revise it, okay? We're then interested in documentation, and to define this in a way that is easy to guess at, quantify roughly. Every time you leave the Word environment, perhaps to consult a term or to check a parallel text, all of that is documentation. Now, some of those acts will be very quick, a question of seconds perhaps. You're going to have to estimate how much of that time you put, and the estimation will be to the nearest minute or so. Sometimes you'll be documenting during the revision phase. That's okay. That's also taken as being documentation, and you would subtract that from the revision. What's left is your drafting time. Drafting just means writing the translation or your basic translating activity. So all the remaining time is then drafting. If you've got technology problems, you subtract them from the global time, all right? Add up all these and you get the total time it takes you to do the translation. And that's what we need. So for the first performance, you add that up, you got your total time, and then you subtract 30% for your target time for the second. Now, when you do that analysis, you'll be able to report on it in this way. This is a template that we're asking you to upload. Just the percentages for text A at your normal speed and text B at your fast speed, all right? And then the number of errors will come later when you will revise each other's translations using track changes, okay? Now, what are styles? We didn't explain what styles are. When you get your numbers and look at them, you will see if you spend a lot of time planning the translation before you do it, or a lot of time after the translation revising, or very quick time. Okay, so you may be, for example, an architect. What does an architect do? They spend a long time planning the building and then not much time afterwards, you hope, unless something's gone seriously wrong. So some people will approach a translation, look up all the terms, get the parallel text, get everything in place, and then translate very quickly, not much time for revision. And that's one way of doing it. You might be an architect. A bricklayer takes a long time to get everything ready before laying one brick on the other. So, you know, you've got to get the cement ready, you've got to get the bricks in place, you've got an assistant to carry the bricks to you. Yes, I used to do that. It's very, very hard work. And then put the brick on very quick. And then afterwards, you have to clean it up. You've got to get the excess cement off, you've got to get it exactly into space, and you've got to get rid of all the stuff afterwards as well. So there's a lot of planning and a lot of revision. You're a bricklayer. Now, painting. Watercolorist has to apply the paint very quickly with very little planning, and you can't revise it afterwards. The more you dabble, the more you paint on top of the watercolor, the worse it gets. You cannot paint a dark color, a light color on top of a dark color. So minimal planning, minimal revision, the inspiration of the moment, and voila, there's your translation. As opposed to that, an oil painter will have minimal planning, like the watercolorist, but a lot of repainting afterwards. So in oil colors, you can paint a light color on top of a dark color once it's dried. So oil painting can have lots of revision. Now, we're going to ask you to do the percentages here. And when you look at those percentages, you may be able to see a pattern, and you may be able to see that your style is one of these four, for example, or in between two, perhaps. And then what we're interested in discovering in this experiment is whether, when you go fast, do you change your translator style? That's the hypothesis. The hypothesis is when you go fast, you change your translator style. That's what we're going to test.